Is Jamaica about to turn its back on Cuba to stay in America's good graces? This question is at the heart of a growing controversy over U.S. sanctions on Cuban medical missions. The United States has recently imposed visa restrictions on individuals involved in these missions, claiming that the Cuban government exploits its doctors for financial gain. But while Caribbean leaders have spoken out against these measures, Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness has remained noticeably silent. Cuba has played a significant role in the region's healthcare system for decades, sending doctors, nurses, and medical specialists to various countries, including Jamaica. Many Caribbean leaders see these sanctions as a direct attack on their healthcare systems. Nations like Antigua and St. Vincent have strongly opposed the U.S. move, saying it threatens their ability to provide quality medical care to their citizens. Yet, Jamaica has not officially addressed the issue, leaving many to wonder whether silence means submission. If Jamaica abandons Cuba to maintain good relations with the U.S., it could signal a major shift in foreign policy. The U.S. remains a dominant economic and political power in the region, but does that mean Jamaica should sacrifice its long-standing relationship with Cuba? Today, we'll break down the history, the U.S. strategy, and what Jamaica's silence really means. Jamaica and Cuba have shared strong diplomatic and economic ties for decades, dating back to the post-independence era. One of the most notable aspects of this relationship has been Cuba's consistent support in providing medical aid, especially through its doctor exchange program. Currently, over 400 Cuban doctors and medical personnel work in Jamaica, filling crucial gaps in the healthcare system. These professionals have played an essential role in hospitals and rural clinics, where there are shortages of local doctors. Beyond healthcare, Cuba has contributed significantly to Jamaica's education and trade. Many Jamaicans have studied in Cuba through scholarship programs in fields like medicine and engineering. Additionally, both countries have engaged in trade agreements, with Cuba providing technical expertise in various sectors, including agriculture. Despite the U.S. embargo, Jamaica has maintained relations with Cuba, recognizing the country as a valuable regional partner. However, the U.S. has historically pressured Caribbean nations to distance themselves from Cuba. This is not the first time Jamaica has faced this dilemma. Past governments have had to balance relations between the U.S. and Cuba carefully. The question now is whether the current government will continue this balancing act or start leaning more towards Washington's agenda. Why the U.S. is pressuring Caribbean nations. The U.S. has long accused Cuba of exploiting its doctors, claiming that the Cuban government takes a large portion of their salaries while restricting their freedoms. This is part of a broader American strategy to weaken Cuba's global influence, especially in Latin America and the Caribbean. By cutting off Cuban medical missions, Washington aims to reduce Havana's diplomatic and economic leverage in the region. Caribbean nations, however, see these medical missions differently. For them, it's not about politics, it's about survival. Many countries in the region lack the medical personnel needed to sustain their healthcare systems. Without Cuban doctors, patient care in rural and underserved areas would decline significantly. This is why leaders like Antigua's Prime Minister Gaston Browne and St. Vincent's Ralph Gonsalves have openly criticized the U.S. for what they see as an attack on their sovereignty. If the U.S. succeeds in pressuring countries to stop working with Cuban doctors, it could create a healthcare crisis across the Caribbean. This puts Jamaica in a tough position. Should it align with the U.S. to maintain good diplomatic relations, or should it defend its healthcare partnerships with Cuba? So far, Jamaica has avoided taking a stance, but sooner or later, a decision will have to be made. Unlike other Caribbean leaders, Prime Minister Andrew Holness has remained silent on this issue. This silence raises important questions. Is Jamaica afraid of angering the U.S.? Is the government still weighing its options? Or does this indicate a quiet shift in Jamaica's foreign policy away from Cuba? Whatever the reason, this lack of response stands in stark contrast to Jamaica's usual diplomatic stance on regional issues. One possibility is that Jamaica is trying to avoid economic and political fallout. The U.S. is one of Jamaica's largest trading partners and a key source of foreign investment. Taking a strong stance against American policy could result in economic consequences, including cuts in aid or strained diplomatic ties. This might explain why the government is hesitant to publicly defend Cuba, even if Cuban doctors play a critical role in Jamaica's healthcare system. Another explanation could be that Jamaica is waiting to see how the situation unfolds before making an official statement. The government might be considering a middle ground approach, one that doesn't fully align with the US but also avoids direct confrontation. If this is the case, Jamaica may eventually respond, but only after carefully weighing the risks and rewards. What happens next? There are a few possible outcomes in this situation. First, Jamaica could follow the example of other Caribbean nations and openly reject the US policy, reaffirming its commitment to Cuban medical aid. This would show strong regional solidarity, but it could also invite backlash from Washington. Alternatively, Jamaica could gradually phase out its reliance on Cuban doctors, either by seeking medical professionals from other countries or increasing local training programs. This would allow the government to maintain good relations with the US while avoiding direct criticism. However, this transition would take years, and in the meantime, Jamaica's healthcare system could suffer. Finally, Jamaica might take a diplomatic approach, staying silent while quietly maintaining ties with Cuba. This would allow the country to keep its Cuban doctors while avoiding open confrontation with the US. However, this strategy depends on how aggressively the US enforces its new visa restrictions. If Washington starts applying more pressure, Jamaica may be forced to take a clearer stance sooner rather than later. Jamaica's silence on this issue raises important questions about the country's foreign policy direction. Is the government trying to protect its relationship with the US, or is it simply waiting for the right moment to respond? And more importantly, what does this mean for the future of Jamaica-Cuba relations? If Jamaica abandons Cuba to appease the US, it could signal a shift towards a more US-centric foreign policy. But at what cost? Cuban doctors have provided invaluable medical support to Jamaica for decades, and losing them could have serious consequences for healthcare services across the island.
So, what do you think?
Should Jamaica take a stand and support Cuba like the rest of the Caribbean? Or is staying quiet the smarter move to protect the country's economic interests? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth analysis on Caribbean affairs.
Non-adversarial handling of this matter reflects not only our practice of diplomacy, but the strength of our bilateral relationships with both Cuba and the United States of America. Our structured process of review and engagement is progressing well, and we remain confident in the integrity of this program. We continue to engage diplomatically, including discussions which I held with the Cuban foreign minister, the current head of the U.S. Embassy, with whom both Minister Tufton and I and our teams met, and of course, as between CARICOM foreign ministers, as you would be aware, we have had discussions. We've exchanged perspectives, and we are seeking to ensure the best understanding and outcomes of this matter.